Welcome to another episode of the Creative Power Hour. I'm your host, Marcus Whitney, and this is East Nashville legend, Jacob Jones.
Dropping that legend. I didn't know you were going to do that.
Yeah.
I do live in East Nashville. That's a fact.
Yeah, you do, man. You do. So welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being here. So I almost started by saying, this is Create and Orchestrate, because this dude... Hey! Just a little throwback.
That's right.
A little throwback.
It is a throwback at this point.
So this dude was my co-collaborator on most of the videos that are on YouTube right now. But Jacob and I met, over a decade ago now. That's crazy, but I'm fairly certain it's over a decade ago.
We met in East Nashville over a decade ago.
For sure.
I met you shortly after I moved here, so it was like 2007, 2008.
And I moved out of East Nashville 2009, and it's 2019. So I know for a
2008.
fact. 2008 was when we met. So anyway, man, thanks for doing the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this
nice
is great.
setup.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Thanks. I learned a thing or two from you. You know what I mean? So for the audience out there, Jacob is a man of many, many talents, and one of the reasons why I thought he would be a great guest for the show is because he does a great job of exploiting his talents, leaning into his talents. He's one of the bravest creatives that I know, definitely fits that ambitious, creative rebel sort of model that I think is sort of the way that I see myself, right? So Jacob, let's talk about origin story. That's like the prerequisite for these shows. Before we get into I
did my
what's
homework.
Going on
I
today,
listened to the current shows.
Okay,
to
good.
Figure out what
Good. You're catching on. Okay, so your origin story. Where did you get your start, man?
Well, thanks again for having me.
Yeah.
Origin story. Mine's pretty all over the place. So, I was born in the Midwest, and then I grew up in Atlanta, and I think that's important because I kind of grew up in this rural nowhere till I was 10, and then a very big city until I graduated high school. And so when I was in high school in a suburb of Atlanta, I got really into punk rock. I got really into this alternate music scene and hardcore music. I was vegan for a couple of years, was vegetarian for a couple of years. That whole scene. We were all straight edge. I didn't have a drink till I was 18.
Nice.
And that really, as I get older, I realize how much that influenced me, because basically I saw for the first time adults, people I thought were adults. So I was 14, 15, 16. These people that I was around at these shows were late teens, early 20s, mid 20s, just living a very different way than everything else I'd ever been taught by television or by my parents or anything. People were, living in warehouses and building rooms in them and selling records for a living and traveling around in bands and and all sorts of crazy shit, dumpster diving, just very alternative, right? And the music scene. So that was a big part of my growing up, and I think that really exposed me to an alternate way of living, and really had a huge effect on me. And frankly, the other 4 or 5 people that I'm still close with from that scene, all of us have kind of walked our own path, done our own thing, and I think largely to the credit of that music scene, honestly. So I went to school for a little while at Georgia State in Atlanta. I did not finish. I went, just got into the Atlanta scene and just didn't finish school. No real reason other than I moved.
I can relate to that.
I was in a lot of advanced placement and stuff in high school. So everything felt like it was leading to college.
You're smart.
Everything was
had nothing to do with that.
Pressure for college. And then I got to college and I was first of all, it was easy. And then second of all, you compound it with now I'm living in a major city by myself, having fun for the first time, exploring everything.
Getting an entirely more visceral education.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Just through the experience of living there. And guess what? That beats the shit out of a lecture hall.
Yeah. It was impossible to show up to class for me. I couldn't do it.
I can relate.
So after a couple quarters, I took a break, and during that break, some friends of mine had moved to New York City, and they were in a band, and they asked me to come up and play in the band. So I moved to New York City in 2004, and then the band never really went anywhere, but I lived there for 3 years, and that was a serious education. And all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I met a bunch of interesting people, and I really developed.
Real quick, where were you living in New York City?
Oh man, I moved around, but mostly I lived in Brooklyn the whole time. So I lived in Williamsburg, I lived in Greenpoint, I lived in Bushwick, and this was all like at the Williamsburg had already popped. I couldn't. Bushwick had not. Greenpoint hadn't really. And actually, like after being there a few years, I ended up moving to Nashville because my roommate and I wanted to leave our apartment, and the only place to go that we could afford was Bed-Stuy. And I was kind of like, I'm not going to move to Bed-Stuy. And now Bed-Stuy is awesome.
Oh, it's incredible.
And it was not at the time.
It's incredible.
Anyway, I lived in New York, I came to Nashville in 2007 to play music, and I was 24 years old, and it was really the first time I took myself seriously growing up a little. I was like, time to chill out.
Yeah.
Like, New York was amazing, but really all I did was bartend and have a good time, which I don't regret at all. So anyway, I moved here, and I just happened to move into East Nashville. I did not know East Nashville was anything. My buddy Brandon and I moved down here together. We came down for one day, and we had all this stuff lined up with Craigslist. And we had like miss, terrible. At the very end of the day, we found this great place. Just happened to be at 16th and Shelby in East Nashville. So we moved in there. We set up a rehearsal space in our living room, and we were dirt poor, so we started going out on all these 2-for-1 nights. Like all the Three Crow, Red Door, all the bars in the neighborhood that would have 2-for-1 drinks because we were young guys, we were single, and we were trying to meet people. So we did that, and in the process, met tons of people, got a job bartending at Three Crow where I met you, just a local spot, and then started like realizing that something was happening in Nashville. Just like it felt like there was an undercurrent of like this creative energy that was about to happen, more so than just the fact that music's been here, for 100 years. And so that was super lucky timing, and I was ready to in some way capitalize on that in my life, and I didn't know at the time what it would be at all. I thought I was going to be a touring musician. So anyway, I played music for several years, toured the country, like founded a little record label and booked my own shows. Like first hard lesson that I would later use in entrepreneurship was, as a singer, if I would call a venue in another state and say, "Hey, I'm the singer, will you book me?" They would always say no. So I made up a booking agent. It was fake. His name was Bruce.
Nice.
So Bruce would email them and say like, "Yo, I've got this guy Jacob Jones out of Nashville. He's coming through. Can you squeeze him in?" And then they would always say yes, because someone was representing me.
Yep.
And then when I would show up, they would be like, "Tell Bruce I said what's up." Be like, "Oh yeah." And then from then on, mysteriously, I would just be emailing them. This happened a lot.
Yo, I like it.
So that was my first like total lie that worked as a hustle. But I played.
And there is really something to that, though. Just like for the record, there's all these unnecessary, stupid ass hurdles that you have to like get over, and sometimes you gotta throw a Bruce in there.
I did.
Sometimes, man. Like
I can't remember his last name, but it was
because
funny.
There's no good reason for it. What did you do? You said, okay, now I've got an agent named Bruce, and now all of a sudden you're getting booked. Like literally, it's the only difference.
I was just trying to figure out the psychology of these people booking these little places all over the country, because I'm playing little places.
Yeah.
So it was like, hey, I have a record label, so it looked legit. We had a website. I had some records. They had the label sticker on.
Yep.
Here's a guy representing me, and then to my knowledge, it always like worked out well. The show went well. They liked it, and I repeated those places a lot. I built relationships with them, but that was a way to get in the door.
Yeah,
it's just a little white lie.
Yeah.
So I did that for several years, and then and in the meantime, in tandem, as you know, this part of the story is my buddy Reno and I, who we built this little record label. I don't know if you know, but building a record label in 2007 was not a great idea.
Building most things in 2007 wasn't a great idea.
That's right.
Man.
I don't know if we ever had ambitions to build like a legit label, but we wanted like a creative flag to fly for us.
Yeah.
So anyway, we started throwing a party in East Nashville for fun at the 5 spot every Monday night called Motown Mondays, and that was the luckiest, most fortuitous event in my entire life, I think. If I really think about it.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. I mean, makes sense to me.
I actually just published like this whole Medium article about like tracing everything about my life back to this moment.
Yeah.
So in late 2008, the owner of a club in East Nashville said he didn't want to have bands on Monday nights anymore. So he let me take over and like come in and DJ. And all of my favorite music, and at that time was all 50s and 60s soul and rock and roll.
Okay.
I didn't grow up with that stuff. I grew up with like Midwestern, like Tom Petty and Bruce Springsteen and the Stones and all this. But I had like, as a musician who I played a lot of blues influenced music, I had followed all that back. Mm-hmm. So in following a lot of that back to early blues guys and even the early country, so all the way from Robert Johnson, Hank Williams, I ran across all of the Motown and Stax and all of Detroit and Memphis. So I was obsessed with that stuff and even the early rockabilly stuff. So that's what I decided to play. My friend Reno and I, similar taste. He moved here right then. We start playing that. Party goes insane. I think maybe 3 months in, we had a line out the door and 400 people in the room. Party was free. This was not an entrepreneurial endeavor.
Yeah, right.
It was just fun.
Right.
But what happened was you couldn't dance. You couldn't move. You walk in the front door and it would be like wall.
Yeah.
So I had the idea. I was like, let's charge cover because that's going to like irritate some people.
Yeah.
So we did. It did not irritate people. We had quite a few DJs in the beginning and they kind of started falling off, and it just ended up being me and Reno. And all of a sudden we have this thing where we have all these people coming in who are paying, and we have a real revenue stream.
Yep.
All of a sudden we're like, this is a business.
Yeah.
Accidental entrepreneur. And that has led to everything else. So that party still goes on, as you know.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
10 years later. I did it last night. It was up till 3 in the morning last night.
Can we just talk about timing for a second? Because you were talking about the luck around that. And, there's definitely you make your own luck. I mean, you had to step out there and decide you wanted to do it.
Totally.
And, you know what I mean? And I want to talk about Electric Western and that creative flag that you and Reno fly, because I think it's an incredible flag, right? I mean, I always have felt like that flag punches well above its weight. You know what I'm saying? In terms of what it represents for people. But the timing, dude, like East Nashville, in that in that year. I mean, because I feel like it was super lucky for me that I got to be a part of it. You know what I mean? Like, because it was just a magical time.
Yeah.
In that neighborhood, man.
I mean, there were all kinds of factors, but before my time, and I think maybe before yours or you were here, but like the tornado came. Tornado came and flattened part of the neighborhood. So then you have this neighborhood that's been kind of distressed for decades, getting rebuilt, and these old homes getting redone, and you have but the rent's still cheap.
Yeah,
land's still cheap.
Yeah.
So all the creatives move in. It's like a typical cycle. And then all of a sudden it's cool, and then everything starts to change, right? And that was happening right then.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have been able to afford the rent in East Nashville 2 or 3 years later.
Yeah.
At the time, I was, this is like, I had like whatever was in my pocket. I think my parents even had to help me with a U-Haul to get here. That's where I was.
Yeah.
So timing was insane because and the community still is very supportive of people. Like when they want to open up restaurants or bars or magazines or bands or like. It's a great spot, right? And then, you had this energy happening that ended up getting national attention. So we launched this party. It was a fluke. Turns into this like blockbuster thing that we don't even know what to do with. And then at the same time, all these other amazing things are happening in East Nashville. So next thing you know, the party is in the New York Times. It's in GQ. GQ called it the most stylish party in the country in 2012. And we were riding a tide, of the whole neighborhood.
No question. But you were also creating the story. I mean, like not the whole story, but I mean, look, man, Motown Mondays is like super important. It's a cornerstone. It's one of the cornerstones that like makes the neighborhood what it is. If it went away, it would be.
Well, I hope so.
There would be a hole.
I mean, here I am over 10 years later. I did it last night, like I was saying, and I loved it. It's always fun. No matter how tired I am, I show up and I'm like, this is great.
Yeah,
You can't. I mean, nothing beats like just the satisfaction of like, I built this thing, I'm designing this experience, I'm playing the music, there's footage I designed up projected on the wall. I'm speaking for Reno and me, and I'm watching hundreds of people from all walks of life. Especially last night, I even like made a comment like, you had these like kind of like hippie people, then there were some like older couples. I mean, it's always an eclectic mix of people, and they're all dancing to this music that was made 60 years ago, 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
Oftentimes people come to that party and they will ask what like a really basic song is, and then they come 3 months later, they requesting like these deep cuts and know it.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that was a happy accident, but I do think what happened next was Reno and I knew what to do with it. Mm-hmm. And I knew it was like something special. I thought, okay, I mean, here I am, I'm bartending. I'm always been like a self-starter in my like mode. I would start bands, I was really into like with the bands, the packaging, As a matter of fact, our band, when I moved to Nashville, I remember, I think it was Todd Sherwood who owns the 5 Spot. When he first got to know me, we would play a show, and like 170 people would show up, and then, but we weren't that good. And one time he even said, he's like, you like draw all these people, but like you guys are new to town, you're not that great. You're like probably, you probably drink more than you play, which is true. I mean, it was true. Part of it was we were in the restaurant, industry, so you could ask everybody. We were new to town, but also I've always had a knack for that. I always enjoyed that. It's part of it, like building something, trying to get people to it. I love it. Highly addictive. Never going to go away from it.
Yeah.
So I was able to apply that here. Well, in the meantime, I really am still focused on being a musician. So what's funny is after I kind of came to a realization after a couple of years that I was good at music, but not great, and I probably would never get off like Motel 6 floors and get out of my car. And I had a kind of like all right, that's not really what I want to do. That's fine. And I turned around. I had this party and this reputation for promoting this thing. And what happened was people started coming out of the woodwork and asking Reno and I to promote things for them or DJ for them, or hey, we have a company launch party, can you do it? And if you're going to do it, like, what do you think we could do? And it just kind of led to like, oh, there's this weird opportunity here. And I had a really close friend out of New York, JL, so you've met, who at the time was a part owner in a very successful agency, and he was like, hey man, I know what you should do. You should take all of this headwind you've got and couple it with some other skills and launch a full agency. And so that's what we did. And we launched a company called Mountain, which is where you and I started working closely together. And Mountain offered full creative services, content development, launch strategy, digital, VIP experiences, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that is where I really cut my teeth as an entrepreneur and as someone, and I guess you'd say in business. Before that, I had some. I guess I back up a little bit. I did have some friends get funded in artist growth.
Yeah.
So I had some friends get an idea funded, and they hired me. I was their only hire as the marketing director, the only person doing the marketing.
Yeah.
2 founders and me. First salary job I've ever had. Second, I've only had 2 salary jobs in my life. That was one of them. And that was kind of like my foray out of like the nighttime world. I'm like, okay, I'm not just bartending anymore. So now, anyway, that led to the launch of the agency, and we went like, I made every mistake you could make probably. Let's get a bunch of overhead in this big beautiful office, and let's take on partners, and let's get a bunch of employees, and let's really commit 100% of our waking energy to this one idea. And so it only lasted 2 years, 2.5 years, for all sorts of reasons. But the ones that I can take ownership of are first-time founder, rookie, built it wrong, learned a ton. The biggest lesson of which is executing an idea and building an idea are not the same thing. And they're not always the same skill set. I am very much inclined to have an idea, a big vision, help build it, get it going, be very enthusiastic, land deals with clients if that's the nature of the business. But then when it's just kind of humming along, and you need to manage employees and you need to like take meetings every day and worry about operations, terrible. And so I didn't know that. I didn't know.
You didn't know. How would you know?
And so I learned that there.
Yeah.
And when I decided to shutter that, I decided I want to make some things again.
Yeah.
And that's when you and I really started working together, because I basically hid away for a few months, taught myself how to edit video, got some camera gear, and then we were like, let's make a show.
Yeah.
And that's where Create and Orchestrate came from.
Yeah. And you, I mean, I just remember, being impressed with what you put together at Mountain, and we did some collaborative things. We put together Charge together, which was really cool. But I do remember when you decided to wind Mountain down and decided to go all in on video. I was just like, it's so weird because you're like, I'd seen you do some design things, and your background was much more in music. You know what I mean? Both as a DJ and a performing artist, right? Performing and recording artist. And I was like, why do you want to do this video thing? Like, we were just talking before the show how, like, I've now realized it was, like, one of the smartest moves you could have possibly made because, like, it was where the whole world was going, and it opened up your world. Probably was, like, one of the last pieces of, one of the last skills you needed to really be completely well-rounded in your ability to create,
It's
moving digital medium. I mean, like, you can do it all. I mean, you can score, you can design, you can capture, you can do the video piece, you can edit. I mean, it's just...
I've always been that way where, like, I'm not the best at any of that stuff,
Yeah.
but I can handle all of it.
Right.
And, like, and I kind of hate it sometimes. I'm jealous of people who can really get all in on something and become, like, the best piano player in the world. I'm just not wired that way. I've always been like, I'm going to play guitar for 6 months, and then I'm going to move over and mess with Photoshop for a while. Like, so I guess it's like, the current term for that would be a creative director of some kind, but, like, you can't direct anything if you don't know how to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And I just missed making, at the time, I missed making things. I wanted to make little films. And I wanted to work with you, and that was a great idea to get some of our collective ideas out into the space.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's funny is I've come, as I get a little older, I look back, like I was saying about the music scene I was in high school. Like, there's some foundational moments that I forgot about that now are like still pay dividends.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, my mom worked at this lighting company that my dad worked at as well, and she was in the marketing department. And I think, as I understand it, one day they were like, "Hey, there's this new thing called Adobe Photoshop. We need you to learn it so you can make some flyers for us and whatever." So she brings it home. I'm in 8th grade. She's like, "I got this thing. It's Illustrator and Photoshop 2.0, 1994 or 5."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I start tinkering with it because I was on AOL and tinkering with this, and then my buddy Jay would come over and we'd tinker with it together, and both of us ended up. That was certainly a launch point for him into design.
Right.
I never became a full blown designer, but that had a huge impact on me because I can work my way around it and I can understand visually how to do it, and I can navigate those programs even though I'm not like necessarily a craftsman with any of them.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right.
So that's why I think it made sense for me after closing Mountain to be like, well, I'm going to go back to actually making something even though it's not music.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny too, because like that decision has been another one that has completely shaped my last like 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, so you and I start making a show. We put out tons of episodes.
Yeah.
We both learn a lot in the process
Yep.
about like how to make that, how we want to
Yep.
edit it, how we
Yep.
want it to vibe out. We get good feedback, we get bad feedback. People, and then like we start doing all these things, and it just leads to I wasn't even sure I wanted to do that for work.
Yeah.
Because I remember it led to your friend Parker Gates being like,
Yeah.
"Yo, who's making the show for you?"
Right.
And then
Right.
you were like, "Hey, do you want me to hook you up with him?" I was like, "Sure." I didn't know him, but I had met him before.
Yeah.
And I actually went into that meeting being like, I don't want to make video for your company. Like,
Yeah.
that's not what I do. I'm
Right.
not really for hire. Like,
Right.
But we had a great rapport. I was like, fine, let's do one video. And we did one, and like my style was something he'd been looking for, and I liked working with them. I was like, let's do a few. And then it was like, hey, would you like to launch a media arm of this company? It's going to mean like international travel and managing your own production budget. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So like it's weird how and I've been working with Stoke, this company, in some form or fashion since then, making videos.
So, man, one of the things that I think has, I mean, I didn't know this when this has become very obvious to me. I would say probably in the last year and a half. Right? Is one of the things you and I have in common is it doesn't matter how bad or hard things get. We have the ability to create the next thing ourselves and bring that thing into the world and create a new reality for ourselves. Now of course there's a monetization aspect to it, but the ability to say, you know what, here's what I want to do, and it doesn't get stuck up here. You know what I'm saying? It makes its way into the world through the creative process, and then through that process, like you've just added on to your body of work. You've created a new revenue opportunity for you. You know what I mean? That's sort of at the heart for me of why I shifted from talking about entrepreneurship to creative power, because I think that's the thing. Like, what happens if everything? Like, what happens if my current business just like shuts down? Like, the thing is, I know I can do it all again.
You're your most valuable asset.
Me.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like, it's me and my ability to create and my confidence in my ability to create. And like, that's just something I know you have. Like, it makes you fearless, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like, because when something doesn't feel right, you're not willing, you're willing to like pull that trigger and sort of say, it's okay. I can cut bait on this and move to the next thing because I know I can make the next thing happen.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I'm just.
And you don't have to, by the way. It's just it's more my view of you and like something I think.
Totally. No, I do agree. I just like also I'm oddly wired for it's like diversifying everything and because I know some shit will happen.
Yes.
I know one of them won't work.
Right.
And also like all of my good experiences, not from a financial side, but also just from like a creative fulfillment side, have been just doing something.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah.
If you talk about it and don't do it, like it's just. I mean, that's what most people do, right? Try to scale it down to the easiest way to do it and do it. Like we threw the party, not expecting anything to happen. It completely like made everything for what we were trying to do at the time. Like we threw charge, didn't know if it would be like if it would make any money or not. And I think it like barely eked above the black line at some
barely
point.
Eked above,
but we made a bunch of amazing relationships and we create like. Dude. I mean, you just have to do things. Like every time I've ever talked to any entrepreneurial class or anyone. About this, it's like that's my number one piece of advice. It's like just do it. If you don't cast anything out in the world, nothing's gonna come back to you.
Yeah.
So you might fail. It might look shitty. It might not be great. Whatever. But then people will be like, "Hey, there's a person who's out there trying to do things."
Yep.
I mean, that's pretty much as old as time.
Yep.
Just so I do agree with you. Like, it's good to have like a strong skill set to be able to kind of make your way in the world. It's funny is at Artist Growth that I mentioned, my first like only job, only salary job or whatever. Right before I left, they were going to hire their next employee, which is a COO, who I believe still works there. And this guy wouldn't work anywhere, if I remember right, unless everyone took this personality test. I think it was the Berkman. It was just like Myers-Briggs, right? And I was very skeptical, and I was like, I hate this shit. Like this, and it was like really expensive. And we didn't have any money. I was like, this is dumb.
Right.
I don't want to do this.
Right.
And anyway, so they're like, just go do it, man. Like, so anyway, you take your 150 multiple choice questions all by yourself on the screen. Then you go meet this counselor who's like, I'm going to run this down for you. It's one of those vivid experiences of my life. And I'm sure I've told you the story before, but like, I go meet this guy at a Starbucks. I'm super annoyed I have to do this. I sit down with him and he proceeds to just pick me apart. He knew everything about me, things I couldn't even admit to myself.
Yep.
Which it's a whole nother subject of like, but like I had things in my head that I couldn't justify. Like, all right, I'm working for two of my friends and I love these guys. And this is a great idea. Like, why am I not happy? Why am I not? And he was like, hey man, you are completely wired for this thing. And the only reason you've made it as long as you have is because you have Electric Western over here throwing these parties. Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
And anyway, at the end of that thing, he said, hey man, are you married? And I think I just got married. I was like, yeah, I just got married a couple months ago. He's like, I need you to have a serious talk with your wife where you say, she needs to know, you are either going to be extremely rich or extremely poor, and there's not a lot of in between, and I'm sure at times you're going to be both.
Yeah.
And he's like, she needs to know that.
Yeah.
And he was like, dead serious.
Yeah.
You owe her that.
Yeah.
He's like, I've seen people like you. If I was working for a mature company and they were paying me to see if you were a candidate for a job, there's absolutely no way I could recommend you. It's like, because he was like, you just would wither and die. You wither and die.
Yeah.
You have to build and move and build and move. And so I think part of it is just it's a positive entity.
On disc, you're high DI, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What's higher, D or I?
They're both like 99.
99,
yeah. And S is like mid and C is like below
through
the fucking basement.
Through the floor. Yeah, we are super similar.
I imagine so.
Super similar. Yeah, I'm slightly higher D than I, but yeah.
Yeah,
it's pretty close.
So all that to say is like I have learned to leverage that in the best way I know how, but it can also be almost like a hindrance.
But it's just you.
It's just me.
It's just you, right? I mean, it's a power, and yeah. I mean, the hindrance is like when I say I'm unemployable, you know, people think it's a joke, and I'm like, no, like really. I mean, you know, people don't offer me jobs. I think they know. I think that, you know, I've heard people say, yeah, we would offer you a job, but like we know you wouldn't be happy because you need to, and they're right.
Yeah,
they're right.
I would agree with them too. You would have to agree with them.
Yeah. No, they would be right because I do have a little bit of a dysfunction just around like, you know, I've got a little dysfunction around authority. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
Like I respect experienced people, but authority for the sake of authority is really, really frustrating for me. You know what I mean? And I just can't can't wrap my head around it most of the time. So
Also,
it just leads me to create as the alternative, like just own everything myself. It's fun. Like I don't think entrepreneur is like what I am. I think I'm an ambitious creative rebel, and I think the manifestation of that so that I can take care of my kids and my family and be able to buy things, because I don't care about money and I don't care about things. I don't buy them now. I don't care about them, you know. And it's not on my vision board. It's not, you know, it's just not what I care about this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I care about what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
I care about having a vision, seeing it come out in the world, and then figuring out a way to pay for myself to make that happen.
I mean, it's so funny. So, like, and we can back into this, but I got into real estate last year. So when I was looking at becoming a real estate agent, I was like, it didn't feel very entrepreneurial. It is. But I was like, I don't know, man. I'm gonna like. I always liked real estate. I've bought and sold a few houses. I've run my own like Airbnbs. I like it. But I'm like, I don't know, like real estate agent. Like I had a really strong like lens through it, right?
Yeah, sure, of course.
And I think it's because it's not like it's not like going and getting a startup or getting funded or even bootstrapping it, and like building a thing. But then it's more I dug into it. It's like it kind of is.
Oh my gosh!
And now I can it totally is. It's definitely running your own business, and but I had to stop and think like, okay. What is why do I like doing things like this anyway?
Yeah.
Why do I like putting the effort to spin something up? I like to control my own destiny. That's probably the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that the hard way again last year, that was something I need to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, it's like, I love creating things. Like I love creating, I love writing. I like making movies, whatever. But ultimately it's like, I was thinking, what's my time and place? Like, providing for my family feels the best. New experiences, good opportunities for my kids and my wife and I, whether it's travel, anything, good place to live.
Yeah.
I'm not like, I'm like you, like I don't need the fanciest car. I don't need it. I mean, I like a few things, but mostly it's like, I want to be able to create a wide lane for my two sons to experience things, for me to continue to experience things, everyone. So it's like, what gets that done? And I was like, real estate's actually an entrepreneurial endeavor that gets that done, and it suited my personality. And here I am like 6 months in and I love it. But I had to stop and be like, why do I have a knee-jerk reaction against this? Why does this feel like lame to me?
Right.
And I had to reassess like, what's the purpose of doing all of this?
Yeah.
And then when I like really honed in on the purpose, I was like, no, this makes total sense.
Yeah.
And so I have to kind of check myself every while and the why.
But that's just a matter of like, getting to know yourself better, right? You know what I'm saying?
Every year.
And also aging, right? I mean, like there is some reality to the fact that you are not the same kid, because you were a kid when you got here, who was just playing and just decided to throw this party. You're a man with a family and children, and
it's funny.
Different.
It's kind of a mindfuck though,
man.
right? Like,
it's different.
Because I thought about that. I was like, what would 24-year-old me think about this decision?
Right.
You're like, punk. You're gonna be a real estate agent. But then, like, it's like, well, what does 35-year-old me feel about the 24-year-old? It's like, you don't understand shit yet.
That's right.
That's
right.
It's weird, and I'm sure I will feel that way again in 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just part of the deal. But I think back to your point of like authority and like, so I said I had 2 salary jobs in my life. The other one was at Stoked, and what I did was, our work got so entangled that they basically said, we have an idea to launch this media arm of our company. It really only makes sense if you just take a full-time job. Like, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
We need full, and I was like, yeah, totally. We tried to figure out a way to like build it together. Just didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So here I was sitting at like, these are like some of the most wonderful people I've ever worked with. I love them. I love everything over here. I love the mission.
Can I just make a comment on their vision to build a media arm? Really smart.
They don't need to.
Really smart.
If anything, it's been a tax.
Yeah. No, I get that, but it just tells me they understand brand, and I just think it's super smart.
They're very thoughtful in their approach to everything.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
But all I had to say is I found myself in a decision where it's like I had told myself for so long, like, I don't take a job.
Yeah,
it's just
right,
not
right.
an option for me.
Right.
And here I was with an amazing job offer. Like, everything all about it was amazing. Like, the opportunities, the work, the compensation. So I was like, fuck it. What's wrong with you? Take the job. So I took it, and it's been, and all of its ups and downs, it has been a wonderful experience and continues to be. Mm-hmm. But I also was reminded, as a result of that, of the one reason I can't really do it. And it's because it's for me, it's less about authority. It's more about master of my own destiny.
Yeah.
And so when we had a really rocky year last year, it's a consultancy, you have rocky years. This just happened to be Stoke's about 8 years old. I think had pretty much been thriving the whole time, and we hit a fucking brick wall last year, and we eventually got through it. And now the company's thriving again, but had a really rough 9 months, right?
And you all like, you didn't just openly talk about it. You used your media capability to make an incredible video talking about it. That was like, it's pretty epic. I mean,
thanks. That was like, we all got together for I don't know how that got debated a long time, and everyone had to sign off. I think at the time 6 or 7 people that had to be like, yeah, I'm comfortable with this.
Yeah,
this was a very vulnerable thing to go do.
Of course.
Hey, guess what? Like, we all look like rah rah all the time, but actually shit was horrible. We ran out of money. We had to retweak the compensation model. People took pay cuts. People our crew shrank. It was just a rough year.
Yeah,
it was a crucible of a year.
Yep.
And we all got through it. And actually, now that I'm technically a contractor there, and we're still doing tons of work, and we have tons of ambitious ideas. But now that the way it molded out was like, that one thing for me was like, okay, I feel helpless.
Yeah,
hate that. Can't do it.
That doesn't work. That doesn't work.
And even though I have other things, I was like, I can't do this. And while I do applaud their vision to build a media arm, and I think it ultimately will be a huge investment that comes back.
It's an investment.
It wasn't their main business model. So at the time when the consultancy was suffering, I was like, I felt double powerless.
Right.
Like, I don't even do the main thing this company does, and I don't run it.
Right.
Anyway, so that led me to be like, I got to try something different, and it led me to get into real estate. And now that the dust has settled, Stoke is powering through, and I still have a great role there. I'm able to run my real estate business and myself with Electric Western, and I basically have 3 jobs.
And how happy are you?
Very happy.
Yeah,
man. So I was talking to someone about this earlier. I was like, I have no idea what the end of this year looks like. I think I do, but I'm sure it will look different.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I've learned to kind of surrender that. I'm going to come out here and like grind as hard as I can. Which is definitely the mode I'm in right now, and whatever it looks like, it'll look like.
Look, dude. I mean, you. I love it, man. This is not an episode about me. It's an episode about you. But we've got a good amount of history together, and there's a lot of parallels for both of us. You know what I mean? In that experience, in that feeling, and I won't retract my statement about authority, because that is true. And it's also true for me that the master of my own destiny piece is like massive, and so much so that, that has a lot to do with why I stopped drinking, because I was like,
that makes sense already.
Like, I need to be the master. I need to be in control. You know what I'm saying? And like, it's funny, as I talk to people about it, they're like, how's that going? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, look, I don't know how long this lasts, but there is, for people like me, there is a different kind of, and keep in mind, I'm also working out, so I'm getting like those endorphins and stuff like that, right? But there is a slightly different kind of high that comes from the control that you can that you achieve once you get past sort of like the insecurities and a little bit of like physiological stuff. There's this other high that sort of kicks in, and I'm just like, dude, I'm struggling with why I would go back right now, because the level of control that I feel, and I know I don't control the world, I don't control everything that happens to me, but the level of control I feel like I've leveled up for myself, especially given some of the challenges that that the previous years have sort of provided. I wouldn't trade that shit. I wouldn't trade it at all. You know what I mean? That master of my destiny piece is big. So I just wanted to,
I get that. No,
I wanted to
get
circle
it.
back to that, because it's
putting
it's
it in
the
that
real
framework
reason.
makes a lot of sense.
It's the real reason why, and the downstream impacts. I mean, about like spending money related to that have been like
it's like, it is.
There's so many things that sort of like go.
It's funny, like drinking specifically is one of those things that has like a network effect on your decisions, right?
It does.
And vice versa. You mentioned like the working out thing, so like we're very similar in that regard too. Whether it's whatever the move is for you, like I feel like anyone who is trying to go out and like do something big or like take on something that's going to be a bear, you've got to come with some kind of A game, and it could be like, all right, I'm with going this, or just I've just am at the gym almost every day.
Yeah.
I counteract that with booze at night half the time, but like I have to like, if I don't get that, then I will be bowled over by all of the obstacles. And that's the thing that has always worked for me.
And when did you make the decision to start really prioritizing your health?
So
from a workout perspective,
yeah,
because I remember that, and you're taking care of yourself, you look good, and that's a massive thing for me right now, well-being, especially through exercise. I just think it's important physiologically, mentally.
It might be the most important thing anyone can do,
dude.
Period. At this,
I just think it's so important, especially if you have the ability to do it. There are people who like literally are disabled and things like where they're limited in their ability to do it. It's like if you have the capability to do it.
It's the biggest thing I do for myself. So it's funny is like I have a almost 5-year-old and 2.5-year-old, and we're in that season of life where everything is just nuts. It's like the one thing that's been kind of non-negotiable for me. I like pretty much I'm always going to spend an hour at the gym,
right?
And luckily my wife supports that, and then everything I do from a professional standpoint is worked around that. And so I think like I was about to turn 30, and I just started working with a trainer. I was like, you know what, I want to feel good on my 30th birthday.
Yeah.
And I planned on going in for 6 months, getting in good shape, and then stopping.
Right.
And I never stopped.
Yeah.
I still train with him 6 years later. And now I've added on boxing, and I've always been a little bit of a runner. Now I'm like avid runner.
Yeah.
I'm going to run a marathon this year.
Yeah, you just did a half, didn't you?
Yeah, it was my fourth half.
Yeah.
It just kind of stacks on top of it. Just like a poor decision would, it stacks on top, and it feeds everything. It feeds how you eat. I'm certainly not. I have a lot of things I'd like to change or a lot of goals I'd like to meet in that department, but the baseline is high because it's been high for a long time.
Right.
So I certainly want to make improvements, but I'm improving from a level that I feel pretty good at. And I think that applies to anything.
I think it's so important, man. I think it's so important because, like, especially for people like us who we like. Maybe like is too weak of a word. We need to have multiple things. We need to have I call it like a portfolio of work. Mm-hmm. Like we need to have multiple things that we're working on. People say to me all the time about, hey, how do you do all these things? And wouldn't you be better if you focused on one? I'd be miserable if I focused on one. I'd be miserable. I'd feel trapped because I'd have a million other ideas running around in my head, and I would feel bad all the time about never touching any of them. So I can keep the 30 other ideas in my head at bay because I know I'm managing a portfolio of work right now, and I can at least feel like I've given myself to that, and I can see the limits, but also I could be like, okay.
You can see the outlets. Yeah, it's funny. It's like I learned that lesson at Mountain. It was like that was mine. I had partners, but I was like that was my soul went into that thing, but because it was all my only thing.
Yeah.
I learned that doesn't work for me. Now, this is all self-awareness. Like, this is just you and I.
Self-awareness, right.
Everything is different for everybody, and I become more self-aware every year, and I'm like, oh, well, I should have known that a long time ago.
Yeah.
But that was it. I was like, okay, can't go all in. I'm like grinding my teeth in my sleep. I'm so stressed out. Not only was it bad, it was a bad business decision, but it was also a bad personal decision because everything relied on this one thing. You know what's funny is, and I want to talk. I've been very lucky to have a few mentors in my life. You've been one of them.
Thanks, man.
Reno is also like one. He is like this weird, like Rick Rubin-esque, like spiritual guru, without even trying to be.
He is something else, man.
And he's a peer of mine and one of my closest friends, but he's also got a few years on me, and he's been a little bit of a mentor, whether he knows it or not. And the reason Electric Western and our endeavors have survived and thrived for going on 11 years, in my opinion, is early on, I went into like more. Okay, we've done this. Let's do this. Let's do a festival. Let's do this. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And we did a little bit of that. But finally, like Reno at one point just pumped the brakes and was like, look, man, if you want to do all that, like build something else, which is why I did build Mountain. He was like, I don't want to do that. As a matter of fact, I don't want to do anything with Electric Western that doesn't feel natural and fun for you and me to do. I can do that other places.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling like, well, that's not very ambitious. Like this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And he was so right. And to this day, we do, we have our core thing and like we'll do random things. But if it doesn't feel like, yeah, let's do that, we don't do it.
Yeah.
We have a lifestyle business. It's not our only thing for either of us. And it's made it such a joy. We see each other once a week. We have a few drinks. We DJ. We have a radio show now, which I haven't mentioned yet. But that, it was like, cool. Are we going to throw parties forever? Probably not. So now we've transferred that into a radio show that we just crossed our 100th episode. I mean, so like, but that's something we enjoy doing you know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
I learned that from him. I learned, like, you don't have to, like, put the weight of the world on every idea. And doesn't have to, like, just because it worked here doesn't mean you have to like amp it up 10% and triple down on it. Sometimes it's all it needs to do.
Yeah.
And you can go somewhere else with other people or by
Yeah.
yourself and do something else.
Yeah.
And it's a much more mature way for that to last longer for you.
Yeah.
It's I don't know if you can, like, realize that kind of thing until you A, do it yourself, and B, watch other people do it. So I remember, like, in the early, when I first had the idea for Mountain, you and I were friends, but we weren't close friends. And I hit you up and said, "Can I buy you breakfast?" And you were gracious enough to be like, "Yeah, man, cool." So we had breakfast. I told you the idea.
Yeah.
You were like, "I don't think there's an agency like that. Good idea." And I think that's all sometimes people need, because here I was, like, sitting down with someone who I knew enough about you to know you had done that in your own life. Like, you had taken control, you had founded companies, you had springboarded off other things, saying, "I think that's a good idea." That's all you need.
That's all you need.
And sometimes just watching someone else be successful or fail at something and modeling after that, and then having them encourage you is all you need to get off the ground.
Man, Mountain was impressive. And I just think it's so interesting that maybe the biggest issue really was the design of it.
Oh, totally.
Right?
100%.
You know what I'm saying? Because it was impressive what you guys accomplished.
I mean, I'm very proud of a lot of things with that. The biggest issues were the design, and were mostly, like, rookie mistakes. It wasn't just business model design. It was like
first time founder design issues.
I had two friends who were my partners who were good friends, and we had never worked on anything together.
Yeah.
And I was so under the stress of, like, making it work that I was probably shitty to work with at the end. And, like, then you get bad at communicating, and then you can look back later and be like, "God, I wish I'd have said that. I wish I'd have really, like, expressed that in a better way." So I learned a lot personally as well as professionally through that experience. I mean, it was like getting kicked in the face. I mean, and
sucks.
That happens.
Yes, it does.
You know?
But then you're still here.
That's the only key.
Like,
don't stop. I mean, the thing about that in any, I don't know if this is a direct comparison, but I was talking with Parker at Stoke the other day about endurance races, because he used to run, like, 90-mile races.
Yeah, he looks like a 90-mile
dude. He's like kind of he goes up.
Yeah.
You know. But he had someone that he was training with told him, "I don't have to be faster than that guy. I don't have to be stronger. All I have to do is be willing to suffer more.
Yeah.
If I'm willing to suffer more, I will finish this race."
Yes.
And that's kind of it. You're gonna fall down. I'm in a pretty good spot right now. I feel really great. I know that just around the corner something is lurking. All I have to do is not quit.
Yep. Man, that's kind of a good note to wrap on. That's a good note to wrap on, man. Or we could talk about that more. But we could also rap. We could also rap on that.
I mean, I don't know if I have any more to say about it, but I think that's, for me, that's been, like, you're constantly learning, right?
Yeah.
And it's as trite as it sounds. It's like, oh, it's the journey, not the destination. Like, put it on a poster on my wall in my dorm room. But that's true.
It's true.
You have to learn to, like, just enjoy the process, and then usually the outcomes are better. I've learned in my life when I'm like, we're going to do this, and it's going to crush, and this is what's going to happen. It never happens. And then you're pissed, and then everything falls apart.
Okay, we may not rap right this second, but this is the topic we're going to rap on, because I think this is everything I care about right now. Everything I care about is what I'm willing to go through that other people will not go through, and how that creates a delta because look, the reality is the world is a competitive place.
Absolutely.
Right? It like, I don't think you can strip out the competition aspect of things. Like, it's competitive, and anything you want to do, guess what? You're not the only person who thought of it. You know what I mean? You're not the only person who wants to do it.
You're not the only person doing it.
You're the only person doing it.
Yeah.
And so it does start to, like, boil down to, okay, what are you willing to do that the other person isn't willing to do? And I love that you talked about the Parker thing, because it was about a race. You know what I'm saying? And man, I feel like everything I'm trying to do right now is about intentionally putting stress on myself, or making sure that there's no fog in between me and the difficulty. You know, I want to sit in the discomfort. I want to be uncomfortable, and I want to make it my friend, because I think that is the entire key to winning. Period. End of story. That's the key to winning. Everything else is about knowing who you are and doing the things where you have sort of, unique talents, capabilities, and all that kind of stuff. But it really is that leaning into the discomfort piece, getting real comfortable with discomfort for long periods of time.
It's like
sustained.
It's like that expression, keep your enemies closer. And that's a big enemy of endeavor. Discomfort is an enemy of endeavor, so keep it close.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
Yes. I remember, just to not think about someone else other than my own stories. Like again, Parker and his founder Anna at Stoke. Like last year was such a brutal. There was a moment where it would have been so much easier to be like, I'm sorry, everyone, you're all laid off.
Yep.
This is the deal. We've got to huddle into our core and figure this out. I'll call you next year.
Yep.
They refused to do that because I think partly because they're really nice people, and secondly, they had a vision that was bigger than what was happening, and they knew if they gave up the human capital, they would lose
That's
too.
right. That's right.
And they persevered. And I remember, I think I even told Parker, I was like, lay me off. You lay everyone off. This is bad. And they didn't. And now here we are on the other side of that, and the company feels more mature. The team feels stronger. The visions are bigger, and I think that we have a better chance of succeeding in what they want to do. And then lastly, when you turn a corner and you see it again, you know what it looks like.
You know what it looks like.
It's not the first time that you get in the ring and you get a rope-a-dope in the face. Like, you know where it's coming. Like, that's just that's just experience.
Yeah, man. Okay, we are going to wrap on that.
Yeah, that was good.
We are going to wrap on that. Jacob, my man, it's been good.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. And until next time, we'll see you. Peace.